Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of council. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Wilkinson?
Your Worship, I have two actually tonight, 7.4 and 7.12. Thank you.
Okay, so noted. There are a couple of sets of minutes here, looking for a mover and a second to approve the minutes as circulated. The one council meeting held February 12th. Councillor Dunn, Councillor Wilkinson. Discussion on that motion. All in favor? Carried. And also the council meeting held February 12th. Councillor Verbicki and Councillor Hammond. Discussion on that motion. All in favor? And carried. Is there any business arising out of those minutes? I see none, so we'll move on to public meetings. First one we have is a public meeting in regard to drainage. And I see Luann is all ready to go, so take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. I do apologize. My throat is killing me. So if I get into a coughing fit, I'm going to pass it over to Dennis. Council may recall seeing this report a few times. This is the Dreger Drain final report now. It was a petition drain signed by the Road Authority. What we're asking Council tonight to do is to receive the report from R.C. Spencer dated October 16, 2017 for the new petition drain, namely the Dreger Drain. We're also asking Council that if the project be approved, that we let the tender, and if the said tender is within the engineer's construction estimate of $110,500, that we are allowed to enter into those necessary agreements. And that the bylaw be read for a first and second reading tonight, and that the Court of Revision be held on April 9th. This area, in 2014, landowners from 1944 Mercia Road 6, Mr. and Mrs. Edwin App, applied for a building permit for a residential dwelling. During the review of the application, it was determined that their outlet for drainage was the Setterington Lane drain, which is to the south of their property. Given the fact that the contractor and the landowners decided that that wasn't a good alternative for bringing drainage through a bush lot, they ended up taking it to the road, thus started this report. R.C. Spencer completed the preliminary drainage report and forwarded it to council, under which we decided to go with the option of extending the drain into a municipal drain. The financial impact for this project, the total cost is $145,000, of which there is costs associated with hydro poles, because the drain is going to be widened and the slopes are going to be taken back. We need to stabilize the existing hydro poles. I believe there's 10 hydro poles, 8, sorry. So what we're doing is we've reviewed this report with Hydro One, and the best resolution is to put culverts in front of them rather than them moving the hydro poles. Under the Drainage Act, Section 26 allows for the utility to pay for that cost. So the engineer estimated that cost to be approximately $84,000, of which will be paid by Hydro One. The remainder of the cost will be spread between the roads and the landowners within the scheme. And that's my report. If you want any technical answers, Dennis McCready from R.C. Spencer is here as well.
Okay, questions from council? If not, this is a public meeting, so I would invite anyone to come forward to address council on this matter, if you so wish. I see no one, so then I will come back to council and ask what are council's wishes. There is a recommendation, 5 different points to be considered. Moved by Councillor Verbicki, supported by Councillor Dunn. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And motion carries. And I think we've got quite a run here with you, don't we, Luann? Okay. So into reports and staff of delegations then. We do have several reports. First one is regard to the Ives drain.
This project was listed in the 2018 drain maintenance. However, after review of the report, we've determined that along with the Dreger drain, just to provide an example, there was an extension done at the most westerly end of this drain. So if I were to clean the drain, that portion of lands wouldn't get assessed into that maintenance. So if you look at all the properties down south of the old railway, they weren't currently assessed until that new extension drain was added in. So if I were to do work at the outlet closest to the bypass, those people wouldn't pay for the work. So what we need is a new engineer's report to add in all the new lands as far as that new extension drain goes. So it's just basically a new assessment schedule. We're approximating about $7,000 for the cost of this report.
Okay. Questions from council? Councilor Berbiki?
Thank you, worthy Mayor. I guess Luann, I don't want you to talk too long, but say in 50 years, when somebody goes back and looks at these minutes and they see this drawing in here, did the boundary of Chatham-Kent move now closer to Leamington? On the right-hand side, it says Chatham-Kent. So that threw me right off. As soon as I saw Chatham-Kent, I thought this was the Wheatley-Tilbury town line. So they didn't move. Okay. I'll move the recommendation. I'll move the recommendation.
All right. We have a mover. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Hammond. Just amalgamation. We're taking over Chatham-Kent? All right. Why not? All right. Further discussion on that motion? And all in favor? And motion is carried. Next one, we'll just follow in line here, the Essex-Kent Town Line Drain.
We're asking council to adopt the engineer's report for the changes in assessments to the Essex-Kent Town Line Drain, prepared by Baird AE, dated January 25th. In the summer of 2017, administration received a request from the owners of 419 Kent Road 1 to amend their drainage assessments due to the recent purchase of adjacent lands. The existing fish company there purchased both the residential lot to the north and a portion of the farmland to the north. And that was by way of a severance. So this report just brings in all of the assessments into their new area and changes their assessment from vacant farmland to commercial development. And I believe there is a couple landowners here that may want to speak to it. I'm not sure.
Are you suggesting this isn't a public meeting though, right?
No, there is no
Okay.
issues with this report that I'm
Okay.
aware of. It's
All
just
right.
changing the assessments and basically adding in 4 acres. I'm not even sure what the total acreage is. Oh, changing it from 0.71 to 1.63 acres.
All right. Questions, Councilor Hammond?
Your Worship, thank you. Luann, I'll be very quick. You talk in the report about being able to control the release. Is that done through the putting a reserve pond in? Is that how that's done?
Yes, it's my understanding that the development currently did not fulfill its conditions under site plan previously. So now that in order for them to fulfill those conditions, they had to acquire more property to do that. So there will be a site plan approval process going on, and there will be a pond within that new farmland.
Any other questions? What are council's wishes then? Moved by Councilor Dunn, support by the Deputy Mayor. Discussion on that motion? All in favor? Motion carries. On to the next one is a report regarding the Gosselin Drain.
We're asking council to appoint Baird AE pursuant to Section 78 of the Drainage Act for a new engineer's report for the replacement of an access. If you look at the plan, the most accurate or most up-to-date report on file shows that the Gosselin Drain was moved off of the road into the private lands at a request from the County of Essex. That being said, a large pipe, a 30-meter pipe, was installed to protect that house. And there's several of them along that length of the drain. So when I go in to replace that culvert, the assessment schedule doesn't fairly assess neither the property owner or the road authority. That property owner for a 30-meter culvert replacement will be paying approximately $15 to $20. So what we're asking council to do is provide a new report on the entire drain with all the bridges. So when I do replace them, they will all be replaced at a fair assessment.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Berbiki, support by Councillor Wilkinson. Discussion on that motion. All in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7.4 is a report regarding the Memorandum of Understanding for modernization of the Leamington Library. Mr. Barnabas?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The former town of Leamington owned and operated the Leamington Public Library, which is located at 1 John Street. An operating agreement was established in 1990 between the former Leamington Public Library and the Essex County Library System to provide library services to the Township of Mersey. The Essex County Library is a system of 14 libraries throughout the county and was established by the County of Essex in December 1965. The Leamington Public Library was amalgamated with the Essex County Library in 1999 as part of the Provincial Amalgamation Order. An operating agreement between the municipality of Leamington and the Essex County Library was then established for operation of the Leamington Library. Specific to the facility, the municipality is required to provide a facility and is responsible for maintenance on the interior and exterior. The Essex County Library is responsible for operating the library and providing the associated services. Conceptual design works for the interior and the exterior of the library building have already begun. Administration from both the Council of the Municipality of Leamington and the Essex County Library Board have been meeting with the consultant retained by the municipality and have agreed to work collaboratively to modernize the existing facility in order to enhance the level of service that both provide to the residents of Leamington. This Memorandum of Understanding will formally outline the responsibilities agreed upon by each of the parties with respect to a complete redesign, renovation, and modernization of the Leamington Municipal Library. And there will be no financial impacts as a result of this decision. Just want to bring your attention to the Memorandum of Understanding and some of the, highlight some of the points of the MOU. So the municipality's responsibilities. The municipality will be responsible for construction of the project, including, but not limited to, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, and excluding the furnishings, fixed or otherwise, of the board. The municipality will be responsible for the architectural design and the engineering services necessary for the project. The municipality shall offer alternative space to the board during the period that the library building is not available for occupancy by the board on the same terms as the current agreement that we have now. The board responsibilities: upon completion of the project, the board will equip the renovated library building with modernized furnishings, fixed or otherwise, including, but not limited to, computer and electronic equipment, bookshelves, desks, wall furnishings, and seating. Upon completion of the project, the board will develop and offer programming complementary to the new space and community. The board will be responsible for the costs of relocating to the alternative facilities during the period that the library building is unavailable for occupancy and to the renovated library building upon completion of the project. And some of our mutual responsibilities that we've agreed to share in common: each party will consult with the other in respect to the fulfillment of their responsibilities under this memorandum for the purpose of maximizing the enhancement of services for the residents of Leamington. And each party will not disclose any confidential information provided in relation to the project, except as required by law or with the prior written consent of the other parties. So the recommendation that's before council is recommended that council approve the Memorandum of Understanding with the Essex County Library Board with respect to the renovation and modernization of the Leamington Library, and council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement. I think we had a few, at this point, everything right now is very conceptual. And so dollars and cents haven't been applied to anything that you're about to see. So it's, again, it's just very high level, and this is I think council may have seen this some time ago. That's the exterior street view of the building. This is the overhead view of the building. You'll see that it's glass. They're talking about replacing the facade and the street side with glass. And then what council probably hasn't seen is the interior, and I have to say that this is the last draft that we have done, but we've since met with the library, and the consultant is still in the process of refining the interior space. So you could see, this is just to give you an idea of the things that we're looking at, but that could all move and be shuffled around. And again, when we get into the finer points, when the financial part of this comes into play, that could change again. So I just want to sort of temper your expectations on this is people saying this is what we want. So I don't know if council can see it, but there's it's significant changes to the configuration of the inside. There's audio and video studios. There's space or maker space in the back. There's some more storage space. I think the total, there are some study rooms, a lot more seating around the glassed area. There's some, I think I might have said it, some more storage that's not there now. So again, this is just very, very high level at this point.
Very good. Thank you very much. Questions? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Paul, you probably don't know, but I used to work for the county library for almost 12 years, so I have a soft spot for this building in particular. And also I am a library user, so I know what kind of rough road we've had the last couple years. We took quite a hit when we had the sabotaging going on in the stacks. And then again, with the bed bug situation, we got horrible, horrible press. And the strike didn't help us any. And I think a lot of people certainly raise their eyebrow more, so then they'll want to go use the library. We have our diehards, but I think getting new people has been a struggle. I don't think we've done really well with it. So to see this really makes me happy. And as we've talked before, it is going to be one of our 4 pillars in the downtown, so I'm really happy to see that. I do have a couple of questions. I love this plan. I'd really like to see us stick as close as we possibly can. I'm seeing lots of spots for people to mingle and socialize, and particular for our new immigrants, this is a great place for people to get to know other people from the community. It's a great social space. When libraries were first conceived, people went. The written word was a new thing, and they went and they could go and they could borrow books and expand their knowledge. And really, that's what we're doing for our new immigrants as well. So to have people come and kids come and everyone use these facilities, it's awesome. So I would like to see us stick as close as possible to what we want on here, and not. I don't want us to go the cheap route. And if we have to put the pressure on, Paul, I want us to put the pressure on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But I still have one more thing. Now, we're talking about this alternative space, and you've not mentioned the alternative space. I have a few concerns. Again, going back to the fact that we took some hits, some major hits, with those 3 events that I already talked about. So I'm really hoping that we're going to find an alternative space, first of all, that's fairly visible, has easy access, and that we don't diminish our service. I don't want to see 2 rows of books. I don't want us to rely solely on sending books by mail. I want us to have a standalone interim library, because I did a tour with the library board, because I was on the board. I didn't tell you that, I don't think. But I was on the board for a number of years. And we toured LaSalle Library when they were in their alternate space. And it was a working, regular library. If you hadn't seen their former and didn't know about the new, you would not have thought that this was an alternate space. So I'm really hoping that we can have that kind of a facility so that it's still a pleasant place to go and borrow, that our people can still have access to everything that we have, And then at the end of the day, if we don't provide what we're providing right now at the corner of John and Erie North, then I would expect that we get a refund from the county. And as a former library board member, as a library board user, as a member of this community, I think all of us should have that same expectation. So I think this is fantastic. It's good news for our people. It's good news for our community, and it's good news for the library, because I think we can reinvent this space, and it will be a new place that people will want to go to, regardless of what the past has been. So thank you, and good luck.
Councillor Hammond.
Your
Worship, thank you. 2 or 3 comments, Paul. I first of all want to say, when you're reading through the report, I agree a lot with what Deputy Mayor McDonald said. When you think about that building being built in 1950s, any renovations weren't done since 1974, so it's time. It's time to get that building done. And to my comment, though, working with the consultant that you're using now, I think Rob can attest to that. We're working close with him with the Bank Theater. He's got great vision. He's got he's very meticulous about what he does, and I'm sure you're finding that out in your dealings with him so far. And I don't think, to your point, Deputy Mayor, I don't think it'll be done in a manner that we're not going to be proud of, because he has done some great things over there at the Bank Theater already, and will continue to do so. The only question, I'll get to that, Paul, how are you making out with if you call them negotiations, or have you entered into any kind of discussions with the board, the library board themselves, with respect to what we're trying to do here?
No, and I think first, through you, Mr. Mayor, the first step is to form this relationship, this memorandum of understanding. And I do want to acknowledge Robin Greenall, who is here, and we've been working pretty closely with the consultant and through her and her staff to come up with what we have right now. And there's going to be another, I'm sure, iteration or 2 of that. So the next step would be for, council approves the memorandum of understanding we have now, and then Ms. Greenall will take the memorandum of understanding to the board. So we haven't, so both of us, I'm taking it through council tonight. Robin will take it through the board, and then we'll move forward from there.
Okay. I'm just going to agree with what's been said too. I can't wait to see this done. I think that the conceptual designs have been just incredible, and tying it all together in the Uptown is going to be great. So I look forward to it. And I know that admin has been working on finding a location where we can have a full-service library in operation. So I know you guys are going to continue to work in that regard. So anyway, we do have a recommendation before us. What are council's wishes? Councillor Hammond move, and support by Councillor Dunn. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. We're going to move up a report, 712. So I think, sorry, Councillor. We're going to move 712 up for this one right now. Bring the sign bylaw forward first, and then we have a delegation here to talk to council as well. So, Mr. Posloff?
Mr. Mayor, so the council has the authority to pass bylaws regulating signs in this municipality. In fact, it exercised that power back in 2011. Since then, several issues have arisen with respect to the current bylaw. The most pressing of which is the change in technology and the availability of what are termed digital and projected advertising displays, or DPADs. The concern is that they're going to become more prevalent, and as the bylaw currently exists, they're not specifically regulated. So what I did at the direction of the director was look at industry standards, in particular the digital and projected advertising displays regulatory and road safety assessment guidelines of the Transportation Association of Canada. And that was a group, working group that had 3 engineers, a couple of PhDs. They went and consulted both provincial and municipal governments with respect to primarily traffic safety, and came up with a series of recommendations. And what the proposed bylaw attempts to do is incorporate the technical recommendations from that study of about 100 pages. What they did was they had both restrictive and least restrictive, and then recommended. And in each case, the recommended solution was adopted in the drafting of this bylaw. So that's one issue. There were some housekeeping matters as well. The authority to grant or revoke permits was in the hands of the Director of Corporate Services. That should be in the hands of the, or delegated to the Director of Legal and Legislative Services. There weren't any specific provisions with respect to refusing or revoking sign permits. There needed to be greater information in the application in order for the director to exercise her her authority. There was a need for greater authority for the director to order remediation, and in the case where that's not done, for the municipality to do it and recover those costs. There was a bit of a holdover from the past in terms of appeals and variances. Rather than having that continue to reside in the hands of the municipal council, it's proposed that go to the appeal committee that's been created. Finally, or two last points. One is that because the work in terms of dealing with applications for D-pads will require more work, a fee of $500 is proposed. In particular, there will be increased engineering resources required, and that the sign bylaw not apply to federal government and its agencies, provincial governments and its agencies, municipality or public hospitals. So other than the expected increase in the use of engineering services, that's the only financial impact, and it's proposed that by having a $500 per sign fee, that those costs will be recouped in the case of D-pads.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Dunn?
Through you, Your Worship. Ed, I've got a couple questions for you. One is regarding, I understand the digital and the projected advertising displays. My concern is the brightness. Is there going to be a regulation regarding the brightness of the...
There are a number of technical requirements, and brightness is one of them that's going to be reviewed. So when the application comes forward, that's going to be part of the application, and that's going to have to be looked at before a permit can be issued.
And secondly, at what point would you refuse or revoke a sign permit?
Well, if somebody was initially in compliance with the sign bylaw and then went out of compliance with the sign bylaw for whatever reason, the director would then have the authority to revoke that permit.
That's perfect, but to me, it also goes to the, why would you refuse a permit?
Well, if you don't comply with the requirements, or you make an application for a sign that's prohibited under the bylaw, then you're not going to get a permit.
Mr. Neufeld?
I was just going to give an example. There are certain requirements, or there will be certain requirements with respect to brightness, for example. And then if after they get their bylaw, the people turn the brightness up, fall out of compliance of what they had applied under, then the director would have the ability to withdraw that and revoke that permit. And
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. At one time, Ed, I ran into a fellow that was looking to put one kind of across the street and on an angle from my house. Are we going to have an issue with these kinds of signs being near residential homes, or is there going to be some kind of a buffer, if you will? Because for sleep and sleep disruption, things like that. I would think that'd be a huge issue.
Well, they are limited to the commercial area. We looked at trying to create some kind of buffer and found that that would be unworkable. So the proposal is, number one, we have these technical requirements that deal with things like brightness and the like. Also, animated signs, which are both more dangerous for vehicular traffic and I would suggest more obtrusive, are prohibited under the bylaw. So it was sort of a compromise because having a sort of a hard, we looked at I think 100 meters and then tried to envisage where it could go in because of where the housing stock is, that it would be hard to find a place that you could in fact have it.
Councillor Hammond?
Your worship, thank you. Ed, a couple of questions. First of all, a comment that I think that, I know that Councillor Wilkinson, even though he's not here, had raised issues in the past about the signage that's uptown. It's inadequate, and I mean, they're all over the place. So I think some regulations need to be set down in order to bring this, so we have some, care and control over what we do uptown. I think my concern is the cost of the permit. And first of all, I want to ask you a question. A regular sign that comes in, not the one that's the DPAF or DPADs, that one's $500. Is a regular sign permit $500 as well?
No, it's the most expensive one is $161 for a billboard.
Okay.
And so the consideration was it would probably take 3 times as much in terms of municipal resources to go through all these technical requirements as compared to something like a billboard, which would be relatively straightforward.
For the electronic sign?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you've answered my question, because I had some concerns about, jumping it from $160 to $500, which is a large increase.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Peter?
Yeah, a lot of times municipal fees are set on cost recovery, and we want to make sure that we're not charging too much either, because there has to be some reasonableness to it, but we do need to recover the costs. Otherwise, suddenly the general taxpayer is paying for the work that's being done for a commercial business. So this is our best estimate on the amount of time, and maybe it gives you a bit of an indication of the intricacies of looking at these signs to determine how they're going to work and work properly. So it really is our best estimate at this time for full cost recovery.
Councillor Verbeke?
Through the mayor, thanks. Even though I know some people, in the report, are exempt, are we leading by example? I've only had one complaint so far, and don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful sign on Shirk Street, but that is in a residential area too at the arena, and it is bright at night. So I don't know, are we going to lead by example, or have we turned up the lights too much, or can we kick them down a notch?
Mr. Neufeld?
There were some initial complaints when the sign first went in. We've made adjustments already to dim it down during the evening and to shut it off completely when the complex itself is not in operation. So overnight, this sign is off.
And just for me, I know I read the report, but it's not in my head. These are permanent signs, are they not?
Yes.
Is there a possibility of, we've done so well regulating the mobile signs. Can these be done in mobile signs too, and will they then fit under the same scenario, or?
Well, the issue with respect to the sign, with respect to the D-pads, is that they are only for the property on which they only advertise what's on that property. So to have one that would go from place to place would fall outside the scope of the permitted types of signs.
Okay. All right. And we do have, other than our own, we do have a few others in town that, will they then be, if need be brought into compliance with a new?
If they're permitted to exist, they would have to comply with the technical requirements. So again, to, I think, Councillor Dunn's point on the brightness issue, they would have to fall within that,
Okay.
because that would be an example of something being initially permitted but being out of compliance now.
Very good. Okay. Mr. Neufeld?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, what Mr. Posel was talking about as well is that there's no third-party advertising. In other words, you can't put up a sign to advertise your hotel and then underneath of it run advertisements for other commercial entities in town. So that's one of the things, one of the ways that it's restrictive as well.
Okay. If there are no, Councillor Dunn?
Through you, Your Worship. Just a question, it was the $500, it's a one-time fee, even if you upgrade your sign a little bit, or is it going to get?
Well, if it, oh, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a one-time fee. If it becomes a different sign, in essence, then you'd have to reapply for a new sign permit.
Okay. So if there's no more questions from council, we do have a delegation here, Mr. Hildebrand. I invite you to come to council, introduce yourself, and I just need you to, yep, there we go. Yep.
Lights on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Blaine Hildebrand, owner and operator of Elite Media Works here in town. I actually manufactured the LED sign that is in the Leamington Rec Center now. I think first of all, I want to say that I 100% believe in a lot of the stuff that's in this amendment. I think that a lot of these LED signs have changed quite a bit and that it is time to look at it. I think, unfortunately, though, in this amendment, we've missed a lot of things. I think that also you've been uninformed about quite a few issues about them. There's a lot about them even talking today with Jeff Armstrong, one of the bylaw officers here, that he was completely unaware of how you even measure the light on them, how that works, how easy it can be to change some of these things. On your sign that's at the rec center, it has to be scheduled in a certain way so that it can be typed in. Now, there are certain other ones like Jose's in town. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but as you drive by, sometimes it will actually flash at you. This is an automatic light sensor. It can be fixed very easily. It's a simple part that needs to be put in it. Now, I did some research, and I've only had a few days to really look at this about what other cities and municipalities have had, but having an automatic light sensor in there is hands down one of the bigger things that is, it has to be. It's mandatory in all the signs. It's not in this amendment at all. I personally think it should be. It's unsafe to even operate it that way. Yes, you've got specs in there that say how to measure that light. Well, how do we go about measuring that light? Who do we hire? What kind of extra costs are we looking at to have someone come in and say, what is that light at? And how does that work? So my issue with that is I can do that all within 2 seconds of plugging in a laptop. It's very easy. So even for the guys that are monitoring this and looking at this, is they need proper training. They need access to that sign. And I think that should be done, yes, on a random basis. I don't know about the $500 fee that it needs to comply. That's something more with me when I set that up as administrator, that I lock that out, that it can only do so many things. It's very doable. I did it with the one at the rec center. So now that it can only play, one thing at the rec center that I know we're turning it off at night, it's harming the sign, to be honest with you, and it voids the warranty. I don't know if anyone's aware of that. Those signs are meant to operate full-time, but they should be toned right down schedule-wise. It should never be turned off. If some of those components freeze at night, you can wreck the sign entirely. So on top of that, there are a few things that in Schedule A of this permit that I would like to look at. And basically, the way this is written, to really sum this up, is Schedule A is basically saying that it wants zero movement. What it wants is a straight picture. That straight picture has to be on for 20 to 25 seconds. It can change within that frame, changing sporadically. Now, I know that they've been through this TAC manual. The TAC manual is one of many different studies that are out there. I've sat down just in the last couple of days here with the City of Windsor to see what they're going to do. Theirs is not in place yet, but they've done a study even with the University of Windsor that shows how these should be operated and what is best for people. Now, I know here we have 10 LED signs in Leamington in total. Only 2 of them can comply. That's Jose's and the Leamington Rec Center. The thing that bothers me the most about that is that those are a higher end sign. Those are at the top of the food chain, to be honest with you. Some of these lower end signs that you might range or spend $8,000 on, Windsor Beauty around the corner. In this bylaw, it says that it does not comply. It's saying that it's not operating properly. Meanwhile, it's not aggressive, it's not doing anything, but it scrolls words, basically. It moves, it has movement, which in this bylaw, it says that it does not comply. Now, I don't know about you, I just drove by it, I have no idea what it even says. It didn't steer my eyes away from the road. But something like the rec center and some of these other ones, they're more aggressive, if anything, but they comply. So as far as a safety thing goes, I think that I agree with a lot of it. I think it needs to be looked at in depth just a little bit closer before we go ahead and pass this, though. I think there are a lot of things that are missing from it.
Okay.
One other thing before I stop, though, is billboards. Billboards and basically the third party, again, I agree with. If you have a hotel sign, I shouldn't be advertising on that sign. I agree with the third party, but in a billboard case, it basically outlines that we will not be able to use an LED ever in Leamington with an LED. Now, I know on the way to Windsor, they have one. A lot of the things, even in the TAC manual, most of these manuals, what they recommend is there still movement. There should be no movement. On a highway, you have a lot more time to view it. It can cause a lot more damage due to speed of the vehicles, things like this. But in town, where we don't have that, I think it should be looked at. Now, a lot of the permits that I looked at in the last couple of days doing research, every single one of them had a business district or a city center where these signs could operate under different rules and different ways to operate. Every single one. Not one did I find that just throughout was the same way. So in certain cases, in certain areas, like I say, a downtown core or a business district, I think that it should be maybe looked at just a little bit closer. I agree with a lot of it, but there's a lot missing from this before we go ahead and move forward.
Okay. You've kind of caught me off guard because normally when people come to speak to council, they're totally opposed to everything that we're doing. So it's kind of nice to have you on the other side of the fence actually accepting some of these recommendations. It sounds like there's some pretty good information that you've got in that regard. And I don't know how council's going to handle this tonight, but I do know that when we write our bylaws, quite often, well, not quite often, sometimes when we pass them and then afterwards find out that, gee, we should have considered this or that, we do bring them back and make the amendments accordingly. So even if we pass this one tonight, it's a starting point for us. And I think if you've shared some of that information with our bylaw enforcement people so far, and I don't know if Mr. Posliff has heard this information just for the first time tonight or not. I don't know where we are, but it sounds like there's some good things to consider in that regard. So, Mr. Neufeld?
Yeah, I think that there, as Mr. Hildebrand alluded to, that there are a number of different studies, but what administration has been using is the manual that is available. I would agree, Mr. Mayor, that like all of our bylaws, they are somewhat fluid as we use them. We modify them where we need to, but at this point, it's administration's best recommendation at this point to get started, to get some control around the situation. And even though Mr. Hildebrand may not agree, and maybe some of the information that he has doesn't completely align with what we have, we are using the information that is available to us that we believe was the most appropriate at this time. Mm-hmm. So, but to your point, there are ways of modifying the bylaw after the fact, after we've used it.
Deputy Mayor?
I just want to say further to what I said to Mr. Posliff. Where I live, there's an old billboard kitty corner from me, and if that ever gets one of those moving lights, I'm not going to be a happy camper, because that is on a highway, and I do not want that flashing light flashing in my bedroom window, and we're going to have a whole lot of people who will not be happy with that. So I like some of the stuff you said, but I'm not falling for all of it, because that, for me, I don't think that adds to anybody's life. And you know what? I can actually take 20 minutes out of my life and not be bombarded by a flippin' commercial, and I think we all should take some time and not be bombarded by that stuff. So if there's one coming to my house, Blaine, you're gonna have me on your doorstep yelling and screaming.
And
Not to
so
mention
so
all the
should
doors-
you.
Not all,
Absolutely.
not to mention all the other doorsteps. So that still has to be consideration. Yeah, it's on a highway, but if it's in Flushing in somebody's
Yeah.
bedroom, we have to really
Yeah, I'd
care.
like to comment. 100%, and I 100% agree with you. Most of these bylaws that I've done the research for in other places, I found a lot were 60 square meters, any residential. So what you have in place right now in the rec center would not be allowed. And I agree with it. I'm not saying that I disagree with it. I wouldn't want it in my backyard either. I agree with that. It's not in here. That's my point, is that there are a lot of good things, but we're missing a lot from a safety standpoint of the light and the brightness. I can crank that thing up to make it look like Miami in 2 seconds, but that's not safe. It shouldn't happen that way. It needs specs. It needs regulations. It's a lot easier to do than what you think. And basically what this is saying is, no, still movement done. Well, it's not that easy. Unfortunately, you're handcuffing that sign. It's not doing anything at that point. You're using 10% of what we've bought the sign for, even at the rec center. It can be programmed and in the back end administration of it to operate properly so that everyone's happy. But like I said, in a lot of the research that I did, 60 square meters. They say it won't work because of the way Leamington is set up. I partially agree with that we have travel pros. You have a house right next to it. It's not allowed. At KFC, you have a lot of commercial property there, but you also have residential property. So what? It's not allowed. The hospital, maybe it shouldn't be allowed. We can advertise in different ways, but just straight up saying no, that it can't do anything, it's a still picture. A billboard, no, it can't happen, ever. Even under the right specs, I'm saying that these signs, used properly, can be effective for everyone. But just saying no to them the way this is outlined, to me, it's not good. This is a shortcut. I don't think the research was done properly on this. I looked at this, I got this Thursday. I haven't had a lot of time to even look through this, but to me, it's not been really looked at all that closely. I get the TAC manual. I got a chance to make it to the city of Windsor, sit down with the guy responsible for writing theirs. It won't be ready till June. He asked me to not really give out the specs on it, but he was more than willing to sit down with me, show me the recommendations, show me the studies that they've been through, show me the TAC manual, which I couldn't even view it here for some reason. It was private. But I got a chance to view it in the city of Windsor. There's a lot of good things in there. It's just not in here. Right now, me personally, I don't think we should even be looking at this yet. We're not ready for it. We're not. And I mean, I would be more than willing to hear another professional opinion, people that have some, experience with these things. But I know that I build them. I have some experience with them. Under the right circumstances, they can operate properly.
Anyone else? Oh, Councillor Hammond, sorry, yes.
Worship, that's okay, thank you. Mr. Hildebrand, firefighter Hildebrand. Moving forward, I think that it's already been explained by our CEO that, when we adopt these, due diligence has been done to try and put forth the best information they can for us, because, we don't know a great deal about it, obviously. But there is a lot of room to make changes. So my suggestion or thought would be, if you're willing and able to, you're a great resource that we could maybe use and fall back on to be able to help get through this, so that when it does get finalized, it's more in tune with what your thinking is, and or maybe some of your thoughts aren't going to be recognized in this report. But if you're willing to do that, I'm sure administration would be willing to sit down and talk with you about it.
Absolutely, 100%. I would be willing to put forth the time to even the questions or sit in on some meetings if that's what it takes. Absolutely. I'm not I'll be honest with you, from a financial standpoint, I would have to sell 8 signs like Windsor Beauty to make the signs that I would make that, say, at the rec center. It's a much higher end sign, and that's basically what we're asking here. But unfortunately, we're really handcuffing the business owner that can't afford that. Not everyone can afford a $30,000 or $40,000 sign. Some people can only afford that 7 or 8. Windsor Beauty is that 7 or 8 range. It's a low end sign. It's not invasive to anyone. It's never going to steer anybody off the road or make any kind of accident of any kind, but in this outline, it does not comply. And like I said, out of 10 signs, 2 comply in Leamington. It's slightly unrealistic.
Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Your Worship. So Blaine, you're saying that the beauty supply, why does it not meet the requirements of this with your research?
So something like Windsor Beauty, it's operated, Augie Primos, they're operated to scroll, to show movement. This outline says 0 movement. It cannot move at all. So basically, you put one message up there, Augie's phone number, 326, and it would have to sit there for 25 seconds. That's all you would see driving by. It could sit there just like that, and that's all it can do. It cannot scroll, it cannot move, it cannot fade. And there are a lot of them. Lightness, the biggest one, and blinking or a flash, the way Jose's is doing right now, is by far the most threatening. So scrolling in general, like I said, there are a lot of things in here that they're great points, they're good things, and I think they should be implemented 100%. Some of the other things that we're missing, like I said, where you install them is another big one. But a lot of these signs, they cannot operate under this. They're not built that way, they're not manufactured to operate that way, and they simply won't be able to comply.
Okay. Mr. Posloff?
Mr. Mayor, there was an element of compromise in terms of drafting this, in terms of the resources that were available, but the overarching theme was public safety, and the TAC manual, which is March of 2015, which I would suggest is the best evidence in terms of public safety, states that animation on D-pads should be prohibited. And that was the animating factor in how this was drafted.
Okay. So from my perspective, I've really appreciated the information you've shared with us tonight, both pro and con. I really have. My past experience sitting up here for the last too many years has been that if we don't take an action like we are tonight, and I really do support what we're proposing tonight, with the open mind that as time progresses that we can make the tweaks if we deem necessary. But if we don't do this, then that's going to get away on us like the other ones got away on us, and it's a great big terrible job to get back and clean them all up. So myself, I feel much more secure saying, even though I'm hearing what you're saying from the experience perspective, I'm much more comfortable saying yes to what we're proposing right now, and then try to share that information, as time moves on, and we'll see where we can go from there. That's where I'm
And
sitting.
I agree that something has to be done, but again, my recommendation would be let's set a timeline. Let's give it 60 days. Let's sit down and work out the wrinkles. It's much easier to take care of that now before we set something in and move backwards than moving forwards and just doing it right the first time.
Okay, appreciate it. Mr. Neufeld?
This is another one of these situations where there's a clash between what's in the best interest, or we're trying to act in the best interest of the community as a whole, and where there might be some negative impact on business, such as Mr. Hildebrand's business, or as he's indicating, some of the businesses won't be able to afford this kind of a sign. Well, those considerations, you have to balance those out. And as Mr. Posloff indicated, this bylaw was drafted with respect to community safety. We are relying on the documents that are available to us. I appreciate Mr. Hildebrand's opinion, but again, we have to look, what we're trying to do, what administration is trying to do, is bring to council a balanced approach, but our interest is acting in the best interest of the municipality as a whole, as opposed to, and in recognition that that may have some negative impact on some businesses.
So, if I can, I want to come back to council and say, again, though, I really want to tell you how much I appreciate, I'm sure council did too, it was an education for us. Appreciate you taking the time to come and share that information with us, and I think it's information we've all heard, administration as well. So what are council's wishes? There is a, yep, Councillor Hammond.
Your Worship, thank you. A question that came up is to mind. Mr. Posloff, what do we do with the current signs, the signs that are sitting there now, the ones that Mr. Hildebrand had alluded to, that don't comply? What happens to those? Are you going to be forced to bring them down?
Well, to go to the brightness issue, If they're not in compliance, they'll be asked to get into compliance. And then we'll have to deal with it if they don't get into compliance.
But I understood, unless I'm wrong, I understood that it's not just the brightness, it's the movement in the sign that,
And if there is animation in them, then they're going to have to stop that.
Okay. Counselor?
Through you, worthy Mayor, Ed, I guess always that subject comes up of grandfathered. I think we should set something now. If it's in the past, it's the past, and then maybe look at it in 6 months and see if there's been any more input, and then maybe tweak it. This is going to be a bylaw, or is this going to be a draft bylaw, or are we kicking around yet for a bit, or are we making the decision tonight, cut and dry?
I don't think that's for me to say. I mean, this is a recommendation for a bylaw. This is put before council. In terms of, I mean, one of the problems with respect to D-pads is not that they stand in isolation. It's that they will be part of potentially clusters. And so you have to look at them as a whole. So, you know, there's one sign and it's not in compliance, and well, I guess we can live with that. Well, you can't if there's another sign that comes in next to it. You've got to look at the issue or the regulation of these in their totality rather than just as a one-off. So I'd be really concerned about some kind of grandfathering.
Counselor?
Okay, we're the mayor back. I guess it's another sign issue discussing, let's say, Mill Street. Is it the first one there that has a DPAP sign, or if we want an overhanging sign there, I can't put it there because there's already one there? How, is there any regulation in here how far they have to be from each other? As long, so if you got, DePrimo's got one and then all of a sudden the TD Bank decides to put one up, you know, is there a distance they have to be apart too, or no?
Yes, there is a distance that they have to be apart. There's an element of that.
Deputy Mayor?
You're not going to like what I got to say here. You know, we've gone through this past year of trying to fix our downtown, and we're constantly told we can't tell people to do this, and we can't tell people to do that. We can't tell them to fix their windows. We can't tell them to paint their storefront, but we can tell them that they have to get rid of their sign that they paid $7,000 for. I have a huge problem with that, because it is exactly the same thing. We need to decide here and now, what is it that we're actually going to go after people for? Are we only going to take the easy road? We need to get after the people, what I see as the bullies, who we have laws for and bylaws for, and we don't bite them in the rear end. And then we're going to go after these people. And the people he said are great business people in our community, and we're going to go after them for their signs? This is ridiculous. I can't even believe we're having this conversation. I've just listened to people saying to me, we can't get anybody to fix storefronts because we're impinging on their rights, and then we can do that. Tell me what the difference is, because I'm not seeing a difference. And if that's the case, if we don't start going after the people who aren't taking care of their properties with our property standards, we either have to do that, and then I can go with the signs, but if we're not going to start doing the other, I sure as heck am not going to go after the other, because to me it's exactly the same thing. We're just picking and choosing who we're going to bite in the rear end. And you know what? To my way of thinking right now, it's the easy people that we can bite in the rear end, because we know darn well they're going to comply. I'm sorry, I can't go for that. If that's what we're going to do, I don't want to be a part of that, because now we're the bullies. But we need to get a handle on stuff, and it sure as heck isn't these signs.
Well, I wouldn't confuse the two issues at all. We have a sign bylaw, and I think we're having the sign bylaw so that the town doesn't get worse looking than it is. And chasing after people to do windows, we've been through this discussion 100,000 times with everybody. We cannot. So
how can we do
fixing, we can, because we're writing a sign bylaw. You can't write a window bylaw. There's only so many things that we can do within provincial rules and regulations. So to me, rather than seeing our downtown fill up with electronic signs, which I think would look absolutely awful, We need to be able to control these things, and that's why I'm supporting it for the time. I'm not saying it's a perfect bylaw. I'm just saying that this is the time to do it right now, and we can make our adjustments as we go through. I don't think we're saying to anybody they can't have the ones that are existing. They just have to change it to fix to what this is saying as the new sign bylaws or the new signs are going to be done. So if they can't be scrolling, they can't be scrolling. So I don't see us being bullies. I see us trying to regulate what could end up being a real mess in our municipality. Councillor Hammond.
Your Worship, yeah, thank you. You know, without putting as much passion into it as the Deputy Mayor did, and I don't know that I totally understand everything that Mr. Hildebrand brought forward, and I don't. But what I did understand was when he talked about Windsor Beauty, who came here a few years back and moved here from Windsor because they wanted an outlet and there was a need for that product here in town. And they've put up what I'm assuming he's addressed as an $8,000 sign. For us to come to them now and say that sign doesn't comply, I don't know what it would cost to change it. I have no idea. But you know, in light of all the rest of the things that we're, you know, business licensings and all these other things that we're now asking the businesses uptown. I mean, for a long time, we were begging people to come to our uptown. We wanted more business uptown. And now that we've got it, I think we need to do whatever we can to hold on to it. And if this bylaw means going to, and I'll use Windsor Beauty as an answer, to ask them to either take that sign down or comply, which could cost them $2,000 or $3,000, I'm sorry, there may be a need for the bylaw, but not at that expense.
So to me, it sounds like we're just cherry picking now. So why don't we just do away with all our bylaws and let everybody run wild? I mean, that's what you guys are saying. So have your way with it. You know, it's your choice. I think we need to maintain these controls. It's always council's choice. We can sit up here and argue all night long about this, but administration has come forward with their recommendations to us on what they think the right thing is for us to do. I agree. I think we have to institute this in our sign bylaw right now. And if it causes undue harm, or if it's not going to work, or if there's new information that comes to us from those who are more experienced in it, or if the City of Windsor comes up with a different bylaw that we can look at and say, hey, that works there, why don't we try that here? Then let's do that. But if we just simply wave this goodbye, then it's roughshod. Like anybody can do whatever the heck they want in this town, and that's not what this council has tried to do. Councillor Hammond.
Thank you again. But haven't we already determined that then? That we're at a point where we really don't know what this bylaw is going to do. We don't know whether it's going to cost, again, using Windsor Beauty as a reference, we don't know how much it's going to cost them to do that. Maybe it is a little premature to be looking at this. Maybe there's more facts if we're going to wait to see what Windsor does. You noted that. Maybe we need to wait to see what Windsor does. Maybe we need to wait for the 60 days that was implied or something else, and maybe get it more refined so that we can have a better vote on it.
What I said is we can put it in force now and adjust it if need be. I don't want to wait because you don't know what's going to happen in between now and then. That's all I'm saying. So, Mr. Neufeld?
I think that Mr. Posliff made a very short statement, but it is what the bylaw was looking at. Yes, we have a sign bylaw, and with the new advancements in technology, it was important for us to look at our bylaw to make sure that we are taking into consideration these new technologies. And what Mr. Posliff said was that animated signs are prohibited. That's what the manual says. So it's incumbent upon administration to bring that to council in the form of a bylaw to inform council that the manual that helps design these sorts of bylaws says that animation is prohibited. And I think that that's the difference here, is that the reason they're prohibited is because they are distracting to the drivers. And therein lies the difference between what we're proposing here, and I understand the frustration about enforcement of property standards in the uptown, but the difference is that an animated sign can cause distraction to the drivers, and I would dare say, unfortunately, that an unpainted facade does not distract a driver in the same way, causing a safety issue. That's the difference between what administration is bringing forward. So I just wanted to go back to that again. That was the purpose of the bylaw, was because the animation is prohibited, and that's what we brought forward as administration to council for their consideration.
Councillor Verbicki.
With the mayor, I still like the word grandfathered. We grandfather some people in this town for not paving their parking lots, but other people are forced to pave their parking lots. I can't see if we can just, I support the bylaw, the way it is, but if you're gonna come back on all these people, WFCU, I mean, there's so many out there. Can't they just program it then to have a message there? I mean, that's, let's not just say, okay, this bylaw's in place, and then go tomorrow and slap a fine or Windsor Factory. I mean, you got to have some reason. And I think grandfathering the people in with an explanation after, and once you make an appearance, if they don't abide by the bylaw, I don't know what our bylaw is about that, give them another warning, and if they don't, then put the hammer down. But I'd like to see something in place so we can work with it. Do we add another line in there that it'd be reviewed in 60 days with the more tweaks or something? Because if not, then I don't know what to say, but I'm in favor of a bylaw.
Mr. Kozlov.
There is a provision within the bylaw for the appeal committee to grant a variance. If council, or if the appeal committee, which comprises 3 members of council, is approached and determines that it complies with the variance provisions and doesn't comply with the letter of the bylaw, that mechanism exists.
And in the case, as Mr. Hildebrand has brought up, the flashing at the one D-pads that's already here, that's not obviously going to comply with what we're trying to do with this bylaw. So what would be the steps that would be taken by the municipality?
Well, ordinarily in an enforcement action, the first thing we do is write to them. Actually, the first thing we do is have somebody go out and talk to them. Then they write to them, try to see if there's some measure of compliance, whether they're willing to work with the municipality. It takes, several steps down the road before we get into enforcement action, where either an offense is laid, a charge is laid, or we do something else. Usually that's 3 or 4 steps down the road.
So you're not really going out to force people to take their signs down. Just go out there and have them adjust them to what our bylaw is saying. So that they're not motioned, they're not scrolling, they're just a stationary electronic sign.
This is what the bylaw says. Please come into compliance. They'll tell us either yes, no, or it's hard. Any of those answers may lead to another step along the way, one of which conceivably is they come before the appeal committee and say, give us a variance.
Okay. One more time to Mr. Hildebrand.
50% of the ones that we have currently cannot comply no matter what they do. They can't do it.
They're just meant to be scrolling and that's all.
It's the way they're manufactured.
Okay.
There's nothing that we can do.
All right. Deputy Mayor?
But herein lies my problem. I'll try and be calmer. We've had a signed bylaw, and yet people still put up Bristol board. I know it's not a safety issue, but they still put up Bristol board sign. They still put up crappy signs on storefronts. And we don't go after them with teeth and nails. But here, we have people who are spending, like Blaine said, probably $7,000 for a sign, and that's who we're going after. Chances are, those are the people most likely to fall in line. I'm just seeing, like you said, don't cherry pick. but I believe our past history has been we do cherry pick. I just feel like punishing these people who've put in thousands of dollars to have a decent sign. We haven't had hundreds of accidents in front of Jose's, let's admit it. No one's been running into anybody else because of their flashing sign or Talbot Trail or whatever it's called there on the east end. We haven't had a history of that kind of thing. So obviously we're not over and above. I realize we need some rules. I'm just saying we're going to go after, because Mr. Poslev said, we're going to go after these people and make them comply. But man, oh man, they got a decent sign. They spend a ton of money. Then you got the guys who aren't complying with the other sign bylaw. They're still putting up the cardboard sign. They're still doing things they're not supposed to. And we don't go any further. We tell them, well, you're not supposed to do that, but we don't go any further. So I'm saying, if you're going to do that for this group, then you darn well better do it for this group. I'm just saying, do the same thing. Don't come down on these people because they have the money and because they're most likely to comply. Because then we do look like bullies, because they're the easy ones. The ones that are hard to get after, the little snake in the grass kind of guys that are only open certain hours to avoid all the bylaw people, those are the ones we should be fighting with teeth, not these guys. That's what I'm having the issue with. I don't think that's fair.
Okay, Mr. Dunn?
Through your worship, Mr. Hildebrand even said there's a lot of good things in this report, and I understand that we do with the brightness. I appreciate that. My only concern is that with regard to some of these owners that already have, and Mr. Poslev also suggested that they can appeal it and go to that state. I'm inclined to what Mr. Hildebrand said about deferring it for 60 days and get a little more information and be able to give a better understanding so it's not killed in the water here. Because we do need this up. I don't want to see. I had one of the constituents, because of the Shirk sign, was lighting up his whole living room. So I understand the importance of making sure that the brightness is, and I get that. But maybe just to get a little more information before we put a vote to it. That's my thoughts.
If I could, to our CAO, are we enforcing our sign bylaw in the uptown core area? Seems to me that our bylaw enforcement guys have been out there and made several locations tear their signs down and replace them with maybe not overly wonderful ones, but at least compliant ones.
Yeah, that's accurate, and we are doing what we can, but the deputy mayor is also accurate in that some of the offenders are those businesses that have incredibly irregular hours and are hard to find when there's somebody even available to speak to. We're doing the best we can. Bylaw enforcement is an awful lot like stepping on one end of a balloon. You push the air out of that end, but it boils out at the other end. I don't think that this bylaw was written so that we would go after those who have signs that aren't in compliance. I don't think we would be turning a blind eye to it, but certainly bylaw enforcement is done with an eye to bringing people into compliance, not to punish. And it's not an easy situation. We're doing what we can on all fronts.
Okay. No more questions than what are council's wishes. We do have a recommendation. Doesn't sound like it's overly well received. So what are council's wishes? Moved by Councillor Verbicki. If there's no seconder, it will die on the floor. See no seconder. So what do we need to do with this report then? Nothing at all? Just receive? Receive or refer back to?
Can we defer it?
Refer it back to administration rather than defer, refer it back to the motion. Moved by Councillor Hammond, and it's refer back for further analysis, further discussion. Councillor Dunn, second. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? And carried. Thank you very much again for coming up. Next item on the agenda is a report regarding the appointment of Community Emergency Management Coordinator.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Barnwell.
In order to ensure the development and implementation of its municipal emergency management program in accordance with the Ontario Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, the municipality of Leamington must designate a community emergency management coordinator. The CEMC coordinates the development, implementation, and maintenance of the community's emergency management program. Prior to 2018, Mr. Chuck Parsons, then fire chief for the municipality, held the position of CEMC with Luann Marantet, drainage supervisor, acting as alternate CEMC. Chief Parsons also held this position while in the role of deputy chief with the municipality. The position has remained vacant since Chief Parsons' departure from the organization. In order to be compliant with the OEMCPA, administration is recommending that council appoint Leamington Deputy Fire Chief Mike Ciacelli to the role of CEMC. Also, administration are recommending that Leamington Deputy Fire Chief Mike Bratt be appointed as alternate CEMC, replacing Luann Marantet. Under the EMCPA, the coordinators are required to complete 4 mandatory courses in emergency preparedness. Both deputy chiefs have already completed the majority of the required training. I think Mike Ciacelli has 3 of the 4 required courses, and Mike Bratt has 2. Additionally, in order for the deputy fire chiefs to have the ability to amend the emergency plan required by subsection 3.4 of the EMCPA, council must amend the delegation of powers and duties bylaw to include the position of deputy fire chief. The current bylaw only provides authority to the fire chief position. There are no financial impacts to the municipality in relation to these decisions. And therefore, administration is recommending that council appoint Leamington Deputy Fire Chief Mike Ciacelli as the Community Emergency Management Coordinator, and also appoint Leamington Deputy Fire Chief Mike Pratt as the alternate CEMC, and council delegate the power to amend the Leamington Emergency Plan to the Deputy Fire Chief. Thank you.
Or questions from council? Councilor Berbiki.
So the no financial impact means no financial impact? There's no wage increase or anything for a different position?
No, there will be no salary implications adding these duties.
Council's wishes. Moved by Councilor Hammond, supported by the Deputy Mayor. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. Move on to the next item, which is the report regarding the Seacliff Park Summer Concert Series. Oh, yeah. Mr. Cox. And Kara.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of Council. The purpose of our report here tonight is to provide an update to Council on the programming that has been planned for the Seacliff Amphitheatre during the summer months of 2018, and also to seek authorization to enter into a contract with a concert producer to put on a signature concert, summer concert series as the keystone of this programming. As Council recognized during the 2018 budget deliberations, the completion of the Seacliff Amphitheatre represents an important investment in Leamington's waterfront and has the potential to be a significant destination for both community members and tourists to the community. And as per that direction, in order to establish the amphitheater as a destination for programming and tourism in the community, the administration has been working on organizing a number of different events throughout the summer with a particular focus on positioning the amphitheater as a destination for live music during the summer months. The foremost events will be part of what we're calling the Summer Concert Series, a series of 6 Saturday concerts, which are going to be held on weekends throughout the months from June to September. These will be larger concert events featuring a variety of different acts and musical genres, commenced by a grand opening celebration in mid-June, which is designed to make an impact and generate broader interest in the concert series as a whole. The agreement we're seeking council's authorization for tonight concerns the summer concert series specifically, and I'm going to return to that in a moment. But apart from the summer concert series itself, I've also been working on a number of different community events. The municipality is partnering with the Bank Theatre to hold local artist concert nights at the amphitheater on those Saturdays, which are not otherwise booked by community events or the summer concert series itself. This should provide a great opportunity to highlight local talent and music in the community. In addition, the amphitheater will be hosting the Windsor Symphony Orchestra on June 30th of this year as part of the commemorations of the 100th anniversary of Point Pelee National Park. And of course, there is the annual Hogs for Hospice event, which is scheduled for the first weekend of August. What this means is that there's going to be something happening at the Seacliff Amphitheater every weekend between mid-June and mid-September of this year. And by ensuring that there's always something happening at our waterfront, our aim is that residents and visitors during the summer months will be keeping the Seacliff Amphitheater top of mind as a place to go for programming and events while they're visiting or staying in our area. So as I mentioned, tonight we are seeking council authorization to enter into a contract with Showtime Productions to organize and run the main summer concert series, the 6 events which I referred to earlier. Under the proposed contract, Showtime Productions will design, organize, promote, manage, and produce the summer concert series, with the municipality holding final approval over all aspects of the events. The total contract budget of $165,000 covers all of these expenses, including the payment of artists and contractors, equipment rental, security, and marketing, and falls within the amount which was allocated to amphitheater programming in the 2018 budget. Administration has opted to work with Showtime Productions on this project, primarily as they are the production company that has handled the music programming for Hogs for Hospice, and as a result, they have direct experience staging large musical performances at the Seacliff Amphitheater specifically, and are familiar with what is necessary to run a large-scale event on that stage. This summer is the inaugural run of the amphitheater as a venue, and we want to ensure that the concerts that we're putting on are produced by a company that is familiar with the particular production challenges of that amphitheater specifically. The further details of the proposed contract and the other programming are laid out in the rest of the report, and that concludes my comments, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have at this point.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, James. Exciting report. Can't wait for this summer. It's going to be a happening place down there. I've enjoyed it so much so far. 2 concerts I've been to. Incredible. A couple questions I have, though, is just to get a perspective on the numbers that you got here. How many were at the Hogs for Hospice concerts? Anyway, how many people attended those?
6,000.
And it's estimated between 5,000 and 6,000. Yes.
6,000. The main events here you're hoping were 1,000 to 1,500. Okay. Second,
sorry, if I may interrupt. Those are estimates that we received from the concert producer herself. If we are hopefully going to be receiving more than that if we can market the event specifically.
Sure. And second question, just for clarity, will we or will we not be doing gate admission to this? Or is this a free concert series? Can you clarify that for me?
There are no plans to have gated admission. This is to be a free concert series for visitors and residents in the community.
Any return on investment, whether it be through concessions, whether it be, merchandise? Is there anything planned for any type of return on investment?
I believe the intent behind the concert series was to establish the venue as a destination for both residents, but also for the larger tourist market. Our hope is that this is going to bring in increased tourist dollars into the community, and that we will see a benefit to the community commensurate with that. In terms of direct cost recovery or things like that, we are looking at sponsorship opportunities that may be available to highlight some local businesses or to provide provide a further benefit to the community.
Okay. Peter, I know you wanted to address that. So,
Just further to that, there's a counter side to having a ticketed event and trying to recoup some of the costs. Then you start having cost of putting up the fences, security, all of those sorts of things as well. And as James rightfully noted, what we're really trying to do here is to increase the destination component of Seacliff Park, because it's not just the amphitheater, then it also relates to the beach volleyball courts and the pedestrian pier that we intend on opening this summer. So it's really a great way to draw people down there. The return on investment, I suppose, is the amount of entertainment that our community will be able to take in, as well as tourism opportunities for people to see what the jewel of Leamington looks like when it's lit up and the stage is full.
Fully behind it. I remember when Mr. Sharon, when he made the suggestion at budget time, I thought it was a great idea then to have almost like a gift to the community here and show off this incredible, jewel that we have on the waterfront there now. Well, I think it's fantastic. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. James and Kira, certainly appreciate the report, the facts and figures. I like the idea that we're taking it outside for running this. I think we have to all admit we can't do everything in-house. I think things go easier when you have people with expertise, so I'm all behind doing this. I give you credit for having a nice variety. You've got bigger names, you've got symphony, and you're going to do some local talent. I think that should cover pretty much everybody. It gives our people opportunity as well to be performers, because we have some excellent performers, musicians, and so on in our community. So that gives them a venue. And I didn't realize about not gated admission. And the beauty of that too is not everyone can afford 4 adult tickets for their family, or 2 adults and kids. It just many times is not affordable. So to make this accessible to everyone in our community is fantastic. And when you think about it, we're the only ones in the county doing anything like this on this scale. And, when you think what the tickets cost to Kingsville Folk Festival, it's prohibitive to a lot of people. So we're offering something fantastic. You can't get it on the north end. We're offering on a site that, again, no one else has. This is fantastic. So kudos to you for knowing when to let go, right? We need to know that we can't do all of this stuff, and I think that's a good thing. But also knowing that you need to employ, if you will, our own people, taking up some of the weekends, so you've really got everything covered. Awesome. I'm behind you 100%.
I have Councillor Berbeke next.
The Mayor, thanks. Great report. You did mention you want the amphitheater and Seacliff Park and the waterfront on your mind every weekend. Here's your chance to shine and recommend that we vote for it. So I don't know, you want to put that plug out now or no? Kira, somebody?
Yes, to anybody who's listening, we've been nominated after only one weekend performance as a finalist for the third annual Best of Windsor Essex Awards. So the Seacliff Amphitheatre is up against some other places that I'm not going to mention because any publicity is good publicity. So if you go to bestofwindsoressex.ca, then you can vote. And there's also a number of there's 19 businesses, or 23 businesses across 19 categories in Leamington that are nominated. So voting goes until March 11th at 11:59 p.m. So, and you can only vote once, but you can get everybody in your family and all your friends to vote. And we've been promoting on social media. Please promote it on your social media. There have been many of us who have already begged for the votes to our friends and families. So I'm not above begging for this as well, because I think that it's incredible that we've been nominated after only one performance, and I think that we all have something to be really, really proud of. And this is our chance to show it.
And not that I want to prejudice any of the voting, but everything Leamington that you can pick it. And then move out to the county after that, and you'll be done. So, Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, it's a great report, and I've already voted, so I'll get the family on it next. A couple of questions that I have. If somebody is interested, a local band, how do they go about getting a hold of who is it is in charge of, for doing a concert or a musical?
So, through you, Your Worship, right now, what I would recommend to local artists who are looking to use the stage to showcase their talents would be to contact the Bank Theatre, who is organizing the local artist nights for this summer, and work with them on the way that those nights are being set up is there's going to be multiple opportunities for there's going to be multiple bands that are playing throughout the evening. There is also an email address that has been set up locally or in the municipality here for entertainment requests. It's entertainment at leamington.ca. And right now, those requests are being reviewed on a case-by-case basis to see if it's possible to accommodate them this year. As I noted in the report, one of our objectives this year is to get a really good understanding of what it takes to run this amphitheater as a venue. So the level of municipal support that's required for acts. And that's not just the support that's required from the staff that are going to be booking and managing the stage, but also the demands on our public works staff in terms of maintaining the site. We need to understand what that's going to look like. And so that's why we're being so active in programming it this year. So we have a lot of that data that we're then going to use to work out what our rental and use policy for that venue is in 2019 and the further months.
And further, Your Worship, so I love the idea of opening it up and to the world, our excellent stage down there for everybody to see our jewel. Is there any thought on vendors? And if people are, like at one time we had the farmer's market or other local vendors that could be utilized. I know that may run into insurance, but if they're already going down there, we've got a captive audience, just give them a little bit more of an ambiance. And I don't know if there's anything thought been made on that, so.
I'll let Peter answer that.
As James indicated, we're using 2018 to get an idea of what it's going to be like to run an amphitheater for a summer. We've even had some inquiries, and now I'm assuming, Councillor Dunn, that when you were talking about local people wanting to use the stage, that's why James indicated, the Bank Theatre is helping to organize that. But we have also had people calling to ask about utilizing the stage, for example, for fundraising purposes, that they want to bring in a large name, for example. And it is administration's recommendation that we do not do that in 2018. We believe that we are full up. And if you can imagine that this is going to be busy just about, I think every weekend there's something going on. We don't yet fully comprehend the implications that it's going to have on, as James mentioned, our Public Works Department, our students, even running the park as a regular venue. So I think it's really important to note in James's report that we're using 2018 as a real learning tool here. I know people are anxious to get on the stage. We're anxious to have people on the stage. We're anxious to use the stage as much as possible, but we've got to do it right. And we need to understand the implications first. So in 2018, we're pretty much full up. We'll start talking more about 2019 when we know what 2018 did to us and for us.
So that's regarding the stage, and this is regarding also with the vendors down and hiring insurance and having that taken. It's just too much right now this time is what you're saying. Let's focus on just the venue itself.
Precisely. In administration, we like to talk about focusing on our core competencies. Core competency of that stage is to have music and entertainment. What a great idea to have a farmer's market or other vendors in the area as we develop the environment But for right now, it's all I think we can do just to get the entertainment component done. And then we'll start looking at how we can incorporate new ideas like different vendors. Because consider that it's not just the amphitheater, it's the amphitheater, it's the beach volleyball courts, it's the new pedestrian pier. These are all new venues that are bringing people to the waterfront, and we want to make sure that we do it right. There will be an evolution of activities that are offered. Well, for example, we're partnering again this summer with Peely Wings, right, to offer paddle boards and canoes and kayak services. Those sorts of things, that's another extension of the activities that can happen at the beach. But we just want to make sure that when people go down there, their experience is a good experience, and we don't want to try and do too much too fast.
Councillor Hammond?
Your worship, thank you. To James and Kara, I think we're all excited to see what's going to happen down there this year. But I'm going to bounce it back, if I may, to administration just for a moment. Moving forward, we had talked about the potential of terracing that hill. And I just wonder if you had any further talks on that, or if it's something. Oh, Rob's going to.
Mr. Sharon? Yep.
Mr. Mayor Patterson, that terracing the hill and having some seating in the hill was considered during the design process. In fact, council likely remembers seeing some concepts where that was drawn in. But after a lot of consultation, the design that we landed on, we felt was the best design. So there's no further intention to put any terracing or any seating. The primary reason being the design we landed on was the most flexible. So it can accommodate everything from small shows where people gather around the front of the stage to large concerts with standing room only and then seating on the hill. Terracing that hill became quite complicated from a technical perspective as well, because now you're disturbing the native soils, and it really would have added a lot of cost to the project, and then created I guess some benefit under certain circumstances, but then a lot of challenges as well with regards to maintaining it and accessibility and the other things that you run into. So we did exclude that from the final design.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's worthwhile mentioning too, because it's not mentioned in the report, that for people following along at home and maybe didn't pay attention to our budget talks we had, this is deferred money from our Sip and Saver commitment we had. So, if there was any, people maybe criticizing us for putting new money at this isn't new money. This is deferred money that was in the budget already, just from the Sip and Saver. Thank you.
So in me, ultimately, I'm excited to all get out. This is finally going to happen in our town. And I think you can hear council peers is of the same vein, and really looking forward to it. And I knew we were doing this first year as a freebie, really just to get things off the ground. And I do suspect, like Mr. Neufeld said, that people or groups will come forward as time progresses and ask to use that facility in a money-making sense for their fundraising needs. So it's just going to grow from there. I hope that our Economic Development Corporation is paying attention too, because I know they were trying to strike out on the music industry, unfortunately focusing it in Windsor, but the real talent is out here in the county, especially in Leamington. We seem to have an overabundance of musical talent, so maybe we can twist their ears. Some people are good, yeah. Others just wish they were, yeah. Sorry, thanks, John. You know what? Maybe we can turn that into our favor in this end of the county. Will there be a list coming out sooner than later to let all of us on council and actually our general public know what, who, and when?
Yes, we will have that information out reasonably soon. My understanding from talking to the promoter is that we generally have the acts mostly ready to go. I'm just waiting on sort of final approval on that, and certainly we have been making for the marketing of the event, we will make a big splash when we do make those announcements.
And I know that this is our first attempt at it, and I agree with doing, is it single sourcing or sole sourcing, whatever it is, sole sourcing. I think it's the right thing for us to do this year because we have that exposure and experience with this particular business, but going forward, this will be something that we go out to RFP, or are we looking into the next year's yet? Not yet? No?
We just want to get through 2018.
2018, okay. All right.
And see what we can do. In fairness, you know, administration, we talked about the fact that wouldn't it be nice to be able to offer to council tonight some of the names of the acts that are coming, and Mr. Bonaventure, who's going to be doing this for us, provided that council approves this report, has been working diligently already in contacting names. But in fairness to him, it'd be kind of difficult to ask him to give up the work that he's already done before we've even signed a contract with him. So
Good point.
we will be able to bring those names to you very soon, because we need to get out and market this anyway.
Councillor Hammond?
Your worship, thanks again. Well, to your point, I know I'm excited. When you think about the Windsor Symphony coming here, and I think it's in June, and bringing the entire symphony here to play at that venue, for some people it's appealing when you hear they're going to play Hockey Night in Canada theme from Star Wars and those things. It's going to be great.
It is. Peter?
And while there will be more information coming, since you touched on it, the Canada Day weekend is going to be a real test for us, because as you pointed out, the Windsor Symphony is coming on a Saturday, which is June 30th. Then the next, and that'll be in part to celebrate the 100th birthday of Point Pelee National Park. The next day is July 1st, and there will be another concert on July 1st, which I believe right now it looks to be ending just prior to the fireworks. So we'll have people down there for the fireworks, people down there for the concert, and the night before even will be the Windsor Symphony. So that weekend in Leamington is going to be very, very exciting.
All right. I assume there's a recommendation in there. I've already moved past the report. Councillor Dunn moves, supported by Councillor Hammond. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. Thanks. Move on to the next one, which is a report regarding Road C 1819 concession drain. Mr. Sharon?
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. There's a lot of information in the report, but essentially we're looking for approval from council to bring forth a bylaw to limit the gross vehicle weight passing over bridge number 53 on Mercier Road C, and that council authorize staff to install the necessary signs. Every 2 years, we complete a comprehensive assessment of all of our bridges in the municipality. Unfortunately, the most recent review has revealed that this particular bridge has some significant structural deficiencies, and as a result, we're recommending that we limit the gross vehicle weight as indicated in the report. I guess the good news from a capital planning perspective, if there is good news, is that this bridge is scheduled to be replaced next year. However, we do have an engineer's report in our hand that basically says we should limit the gross vehicle weight, and exercising due diligence demands that we take a hard look at that, and we're recommending that council approves that recommendation. So there will not be any impact on regular passenger vehicles. There will likely be impact on large farm equipment and other types of commercial vehicles. However, there will be alternate routes that those vehicles can take, and there'll be a lot of signs up warning the motorists.
Okay. Questions from council? Councillor Verbeke?
Through the mayor, thanks, Rob. You've lived out there where you live, and you know there's been a couple of bridges put in your area. I don't know why, but anyway, that's a little fun. Out there is never a good time for farmers, but how long do you expect? Do you expect 5, 6 months if there's no, because I mean there's alternate routes, but still that's at the marsh, so that's, you know.
The way the capital plan's laid out right now, Councillor, is that we're going to replace this bridge next year. So if council approves this tonight, we'll put the limitations on the bridge within the next few weeks. That will remain in place likely until that bridge is replaced. If council approves that project in the 2019 budget, we're likely looking at the summer of 2019, so that restriction will be in place probably for 15 to 18 months.
Okay, Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Your Worship, the enforcement of this is obviously on the OPP.
To you, Mayor Patterson. Yes, that's correct. There are fines associated with not complying with these restrictions, and those are laid out under the financial impact. So we do this for a number of reasons. I mean, first and foremost, we don't want the bridge collapsing and people to be getting hurt. If we're getting reports that it is being ignored, we can certainly let the OPP know and they could monitor the situation.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Verbicki, supported by Councillor Dunn. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. Next item is the report regarding the Heritage, the Heritage Committee. And I've got Ms. Truax.
Good evening, Mayor Patterson, members of council. This report's been prepared and presented on behalf of the Leamington Municipal Heritage Advisory Committee, and it is to advise council of the annual activities and expenditures of that committee. The report goes on to highlight some of the activities that have been undertaken by the committee, including what's probably the most significant accomplishment in 2016, and that was the adoption of the Municipal Heritage Register. So again, the register is really just a compilation of information on Leamington's 4 designated properties, as well as 270 properties that have heritage potential. That register is now a very useful tool for protecting Leamington's heritage, as well as keeping property owners informed. The committee is very proud to acknowledge that Olivia Ashton, the summer research student, was recognized by the ACO and was awarded the 2016 Next Gen Award for her work on the Leamington Register. Last year, the majority of the committee's efforts went towards assembling and gathering information for a heritage display, which featured Leamington's history of great eating establishments and restaurants, and that was showcased at the Summer Sip and Savor event. There is a heritage page now on the municipal website. It includes information regarding the Heritage Register. It has a page of frequently asked questions about heritage properties and what it means to be designated, as well as a gallery of historical pictures of Leamington. So it is anticipated in 2018 that the committee will focus on researching heritage properties and buildings with property owners that are interested in the process, as well as work towards developing electronic and paper walking tours. The funding for the committee and the activities they undertake are found and presented under the Planning Services budget. In the past years and within 2018, this budget typically includes the salary for a summer research student, attendance at the Heritage Conference, as well as the costs that are associated with researching properties. This report has been provided to council for information, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? None? Order of council's wishes. Councillor Dunn?
Through your worship, Danielle, you're always such a leader in this on this committee. I'm really excited about the research and actually learning a little bit more history of our community. So, anyway,
Moved. Support by Councillor Hammond. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. Next item is report in regard to site plan approval delegation. And
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Similar to the last report, this report is intended to provide council with information regarding the site plans that were approved during 2017 by administration under the Delegation of Powers and Duties Bylaw and Policies. So as council's aware, the Delegation of Powers and Duties Bylaw was passed in December of 2016, and that delegated to both myself as the manager of planning services and in some cases the planner, the ability to approve site plan applications and to enter into site plan agreements. As a condition of that approval, council was to receive a biannual report on the exercise of that power. So it's nice that we have 2 complete years to demonstrate how that delegation has been used. So in 2016, there were 28 site plan applications that were received. 17 of those were brought to council and presented for approval through the regular staff report process. The remaining 9 moved through the review process within the Development Support Committee and were approved by the Manager of Planning Services in 2017. The elimination of the report to council for approval was at a minimum a 2 weeks time saving for the applicant waiting for a building permit. So in 2017, which was our first year of the delegated approval, we had 35 formal applications. 25 of those have received approval, and they have entered into site plan agreements, which have enabled the building permits to be released. For council's information, the 10 remaining are still actively under review with the applicant and the Development Support Committee. So in addition to the formal applications that are under the delegation authority, the Development Support Committee reviews several development proposals which may not proceed to the stage of a formal application. Each of these proposals and applications typically include multiple versions of the site plans before they reach an approval stage. In 2017, there were in excess of 70 individual proposals which were reviewed in addition to the formal applications. So during the year, planning strived to keep council informed of new development via informal updates and provided correspondence on such new projects as the Wave Direct project. So council received an email letting them know that it was approved, and that's just north of us here on Erie Street. Council was also made aware of development which required site plan approval during the public meetings for other Planning Act applications. And an example of this would be the more recent consideration of the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for the drive-through restaurant on the south end of Erie Street. In this case, the public meeting was also used to obtain information from residents that would be mitigated and implemented in the site plan. Administration also has the ability to present site plans to council for consideration and approval which may be controversial or include conditions which are outside of the provisions of the typical site plan agreement. In 2017, 2 site plans were presented to council for consideration under these circumstances. The first was the residential apartment building at 40 Seacliff Drive East. That was at the request of the Committee of Adjustment so that council was aware of the variances that were requested for the property. The second was the site plan agreement for 605 County Road 18, and that is for UE enclosures. That one was brought forward to acknowledge the need for a special provision within the agreement to address the driveway that was installed on a county road and shown on the site plan. For council's information, site plan approval can also be obtained a third way, and that's by way of a director's exemption. Bylaw 63205, that's the bylaw that establishes the entire municipality as a site plan control area. It contains provisions which state that if a development meets certain criteria, they can be exempted from the requirement to go through the formal site plan process. These exemptions are reviewed and vetted through the Development Support Committee and typically include minor additions which do not require servicing, changes to parking lot layouts, and the addition of signage on a property. Planning Services has now been able to track these types of approvals. This is going to assist us, as well as engineering, in being able to return securities faster for projects which may have been allowed to slightly modify their plans over time outside of the formal approval process. In addition to tracking these informal changes to site plans, planning and engineering are also now in a position to begin working together to review site plans, which have had security sitting with us for some time. This will help the municipality ensure that the necessary work is being completed at each stage of development. This will be a benefit when new development is brought forward on those properties, and it'll also get those securities back to the applicants faster. Pending any further questions from council, this report has been presented for information.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the info, Danielle, very much so. It's good to have that bird's eye view of what's gone on, and it's quite amazing, really, to see how many site plans and so on were in the queue. I guess what I had a problem with was the recommendation. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand if we were giving more powers and duties to this position, or were we just receiving the information?
Yep, just receive.
Just to receive the information. Okay. I wasn't here when we did the original delegation of powers and duties, so it's like missing multiplication class when you did the 7 times table. You're never good at that 7 times table. Yeah, well, it is now. So I feel that I've not always been up to speed on that. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't changing anything, because I will tell you, I miss seeing that. I know it is a hitch in the process because we don't meet on a weekly basis, but I do miss seeing those site plans. But this is good, and I asked you to give us some updates as to what's going on. Certainly appreciate it, and keep that up, because that's the only way we know and understand exactly what's going on. So appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Worship. Danielle, I'm just wondering about the last paragraph in the report here where it says planning services and engineering services will begin meeting in 2018 to review historical site plan approvals for the purpose of ensuring the work has been completed and whether securities have been returned. I'm just wondering, what's the scope, what's the size of that list that you're going to be looking at, and how far back does it go?
In discussions with engineering, they go back past the 2000s, so into the 1990s. There's lots, yep.
I thought you were going to say 2 or 3 years ago. Whoa. All right.
So that's what happens when you don't have enough staff, right? I know, eh? Isn't it awful? You know what, Danielle, I just want to say that was one heck of a list of work that you and your department have gone through, and I say congratulations on getting through as much of it as you have. I know some members of council were a little reticent to giving up that little hands-on control of this, but by your report, it has really benefited the applicants, because we're moving through that red tape a lot quicker than it used to be. I agree with the deputy mayor. It was always neat for us to be able to know what's going on, but there were a lot of occasions when we really didn't have to know what was going on, unless, as we all agreed, there was something controversial going to happen, and those have come back to us. So I applaud you, and I applaud your department, and I applaud administration, Mr. Barnwell's, for all that work. And good luck cleaning up our past history, but I know you'll get at it. So anyway, there is a motion to receive this report. Councillor Dunn, Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Dunn. Discussion on that motion? All in favor? Carried. Next report is Community Transportation Grant Program. Mr. Sharon.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. The 2017 Community Transportation Grant Program is a provincial initiative established to provide financial assistance to Ontario municipalities for the development and implementation of community transportation initiatives. The CT Grant Program is a 5-year, $30 million program to build services and ridership. All Ontario municipalities are eligible to receive the funding through a competitive grant process. The objectives of the CT program are to improve mobility options for individuals that do not have access to transportation, to build or enhance capacity to meet local needs, regional and intercommunity transportation demand where there is no viability for private transportation services. My apologies. Create or contribute to networks of transportation services that can support local transportation hubs and that conveniently connect passengers to other communities, and to improve service delivery and efficiency through collaboration, leveraging existing services, sharing and innovation through information technology. Proposals will be evaluated against a predetermined set of criteria, and projects will be awarded on a competitive basis. Successful proposals will generally demonstrate that they understand the mobility needs of their community, prove that the projects address gaps and unmet transportation needs, collaborate with community partners to share resources, provide services at least 5 days a week with at least 2 runs per day, provide regular stops along the route, and propose vehicles that must carry a minimum of 10 passengers, and that is for the long distance stream. Typically I don't read sections of the report, but I think it's important because when you to detail that, because when you understand the program requirements, it helps to understand why council is seeing the recommended program that they're seeing in this report. The province has identified that projects creating transit and transportation links through certain communities, they've identified that as a priority. That didn't include the Windsor-Essex connection specifically, but that doesn't exclude our project. And in fact, we feel that the Leamington to Windsor link has a lot of benefits. The first being that the region has experienced the elimination of intercommunity coach and rail service, so currently there is no public transportation between Leamington and Windsor. Our community requires a critical link within our Earshore St. Clair Local Health Integration Network, again, transportation and transit for all sorts of medical reasons. And the two communities contain the highest and second highest number of employment opportunities within the Windsor region. And council will read that trying to provide some transportation between Windsor and Leamington for the purposes of employment is a real driver behind this proposal. We are currently preparing a transit master plan for the municipality. Unfortunately, we don't always control the timing as it relates to these grant programs, so we do not expect our master plan to be created for several weeks, although we are well on our way. Although we are using some of the information gathered in that master planning process to support our application, should council approve us to move forward and submit. And the deadline for submission to this program is February 28th, so that's on Wednesday. Yes, and the program was released in late December. So as you can appreciate, over the last 7 weeks or so, we've been spending a lot of time on this particular initiative and trying to put together a business plan for council. So in considering the grant program, we met with various community partners, SECC, Switzer Cardi, and Point Pelee National Park, to name a few. Discussions with SECC confirmed a number of transportation needs in the community, particularly transportation between Wheatley, Leamington, Kingsville, and between Leamington and Windsor. Transportation is needed for employment, for education purposes, to help our new Canadians who don't have transportation of their own, for healthcare services, and a particular need for English as a second language purposes. A limited number of students and adults currently completing training at St. Clair College already use a service offered by SECC. And in case council is not aware, SECC does have a run in the morning and the run in the late afternoon for students attending St. Clair. So it basically leaves from Windsor and goes to St. Clair College in Windsor. So as a result of our consultation of reviewing the program guidelines, the eligibility, and the needs in the community, we're recommending that Leamington apply to the CT grant program for a project under the long-distance scheduled intercommunity bus service stream. The project would be a new transit route from Leamington through Kingsville to Windsor, St. Clair, with a stop in Essex. SECC would continue to operate their existing service of providing 2 trips per day to St. Clair College, and an additional 3 trips per day would be provided. An early morning school / employment run, a midday run, and a run that would end the day after the existing run from SECC. And this would provide a total of 5 trips to the Windsor area per day, 2 existing trips. Now again, that's limited to students attending St. Clair College, but our program that we're proposing would add 3 more trips under Leamington Transit that would be open to anyone who needs that transportation service. This need for a Leamington to Windsor route was identified in the County of Essex Transit Assessment Report that was prepared a few years ago. However, the economics associated with the proposed regional transit service prevented program implementation on a regional basis. I did identify the route from the Essex County Transit Study, and that's included in the report as attachment number 1. Our route for the subject proposal would likely include a stop at the Kingsville and Essex Arena, as opposed to these stops identified in the county study along Highway number 3. We would also, this would avoid the need for transit shelters and the associated parking infrastructure and maintenance with them. It's basically utilizing existing municipal resources in our communities. And I've included just a conceptual route with regards to this, this proposed option that shows us stopping at, that leaving our existing recreational complex, stopping at the Kingsville Arena, the Essex Arena, and then up to St. Clair College and the University of Windsor, and perhaps a stop or 2 in the city of Windsor. Within the context of the long-distance stream, this proposal demonstrates a potential collaboration, which is a requirement, and the sharing of assets and resources to offer a fixed route with fixed schedule linking multiple communities convenient service to the general public, service for at least 5 days per week with 3 return trips per day, regular stops along the route, a service with reasonable fares to cover a portion of the operating costs, and a service that's going to last for a minimum of 5 years. If we are proposing to make stops in other communities, which frankly is a requirement of the long-distance program, we require letters of support from those municipalities. We have already received the letters of support from both Kingsville and Essex. And in speaking with administration from the City of Windsor, they are recommending to their council that they provide a letter of support to Leamington. However, that letter of support will be a little bit more general than the others, essentially noting that they do wish to talk about the operational model, which is fine. What we're proposing in the grant application and what council's seeing tonight is a business plan that we've put together over basically from conception when we sat down and started talking, what are the demands of the community. We reviewed many different options and possibilities with regards to transit, eventually landed on this program, put together a business plan, costed it out, laid it out, talked practically how it would work, and then had to reach out to our community partners in a very short time frame. So we're fine with that. And that, these discussions, if we are successful, if council approves it tonight and we are successful with the grant, we can have a number of conversations with regards to what does this actual model look like, up to and including a partnership with Windsor Transit to provide the service. We needed to lay this out and put a plan together in order to submit the grant program, but it is the service that's provided and the outcomes of that service that is the most important part of the program at this stage, or of the grant application at this stage, and not necessarily exactly who we're partnering with and what that business model looks like. So through the long-distance scheduled intercommunity bus service stream, municipalities are eligible for up to $1.5 million or more toward one or more projects. And you'll see I noted in the report, given the size of the population that this program is serving, it is highly unlikely that we would receive the $1.5 million grant, so we likely shouldn't ask for the $1.5 million grant. We should be reasonable. We anticipate that the cost to operate a transit route between Leamington and Windsor with 3 runs per day, 5 days per week, would start off around $220,000 per year in year 1, escalating to $250,000 per year in year 5, with a total cost of $1.1 million and $1.17 million over the life of the program. At this stage, we're proposing that we purchase a new accessible bus under the program, which is covered, and that we would enter into an agreement with someone to provide some Switzer card I note in the report, to provide backup in case that primary bus is out of service. I think we calculated the total kilometers to be about 550,000 kilometers driven over the life, which is actually the expected useful life of the type of bus we're looking at. So it sounds like a lot for a typical vehicle, but we're right in that ballpark. But after the 5 years, the bus would be done. I did provide some costing information in the report. Each and every one of those lines has numerous lines of detail beneath it. But from a summary perspective, council can see that the total project cost, in addition to the contribution we're recommending, expected revenue from fares, and other funding in the total grant request. So as council can see, we're recommending that council commit to $25,000 per year for this program, or $125,000 over the life of the program. This has to come from municipal own source funding, likely taxation, but we could use some other own source funding. SECC was proposing $102,000 in in-kind services, so basically some additional wages and overhead and time that their staff would spend on the program that they wouldn't bill the program for. And along the same vein, the application, we would include about $60,000 in in-kind services. We figured about $10,000 in in-kind wage contribution, and then another approximately $10,000 because the way the money flows in through the program, if we're going to need to buy the bus in year 1 if we go that route, but we can only receive up to a maximum of 25% of the total grant in year 1, so the municipality would have to finance the purchase of that bus. And we figured that would be worth about $10,000 over the 5-year life of the program. important to note that Ontario Transit gas tax cannot be used to fund the program. And the total grant request that we'd be asking for is of the province is $606,000. I did want to, Council likely notes that there's a contribution recommended here from Leamington and no other municipality that would be involved. There's some sophisticated reasons as in certain circumstances, and others are more pragmatic. The Kingsville consideration, I wouldn't think it would be wise to request a contribution of Kingsville simply because Kingsville already defers all of their gas tax allocation through the Ontario Transit Gas Tax Program to Leamington. And we use that money to run our own transit service currently. Given the fact that we're essentially running through that community anyway, given the fact that stops along community routes are required in order to be eligible, and really what we're trying to do is get a route established between Leamington and Windsor. Having them on board is certainly an important part of it. Essex is probably a more pragmatic reason at this stage. We frankly didn't have any time whatsoever to sit down with Essex administration, put a proposal together, have them write a report, go to their council and recommend that they could contribute a few $1,000s a year for the single stop we'd make at the Essex Arena while we're passing by there anyway. And then Windsor, a lot of the same reasons. Timing was a big part of this. We certainly see this as being, if we can get this up and running, a huge benefit to Leamington, both to the residents here, that they can gain employment and educational, transportation for employment and education in Windsor, and potentially for some of our businesses here, if they can start getting, I know there's certain sectors that are experiencing quite an employee shortage, and if they can perhaps attract some employees out of Windsor, that would be beneficial to them. So that's all I had.
Thank you very much. So tonight, council's really clear. All we're doing is, if we pass this recommendation, we're just saying, yes, apply for the money, and onward we go. So for me, as the person who keeps bugging you year after year after year to expand our bus service into Wheatley and Kingsville, when I read this report, you just blew my mind. So I had never anticipated us setting up an express trip to the city of Windsor, and I know it's been asked for. I know at the county level it was completely unaffordable, unsustainable, the program that they were presenting. So to see Leamington step forward and take leadership on this is absolutely wonderful. So I thank you for getting this done in the 7-week time frame that you have, and I am going to keep my fingers crossed that this grant money comes our way. So, and we'll set the example, whether we're on the wrong side of Highway 3 or not. So I'm going to start with Peter first.
Just in addition to Rob's report, the turnaround on the request for letters of support from Kingsville and Essex was almost immediate. So I want to acknowledge that the CAOs and the communities themselves really came to the table right away. But there were a couple of other partners who also did, and that's Stephen McKenzie from Windsor Essex Economic Development Corporation wrote a letter of support, highlighting the importance on the economic and filling jobs, matching, people who are looking for jobs in organizations that have jobs. This is going to help match them up. And the other response came almost immediately from President of St. Clair College, Patty France. So I wanted to at least take a moment to acknowledge that those community partners came to the table right away. I am still expecting a response from the University of Windsor. Rob has indicated that the City of Windsor has responded in the positive as well. So the only one we're really waiting for right now is the University of Windsor, and I expect to hear something from them very soon.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's fantastic, Rob. Just fantastic. You've made it affordable. Even if we didn't get that funding, it still is an affordable thing where, like the mayor said, when it was under the county's umbrella, it was cost prohibitive. So that's fantastic. I do like it that we're going after it. We're in control of our own destiny. As soon as you get too many people in the, especially at that level, I'm trying to be tactful, but I think the fact that we're basically driving, never mind, we're basically driving the bus. I think then we're the authors of our destiny, right? Because we don't have to kowtow. I do have a bit of a niggle there with the city wanting to have it seems like a tad of control, but you've got this displayed like so well with all your facts and figures. It's fantastic. What this means to so many people is measurable.
Mind-blowing. Yep.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's
Yep.
good. Good for you. Good for you. Good for whoever saw this, and I'm assuming it's you. and then to drill down and get all this stuff, all these figures, and all these already the partners you've got at the table. Again, that's remarkable. It's just, I honestly thought we'd never see that happen. Really, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, so way to go.
Yep. Councillor Hammond.
Your worship, thank you. Yeah, and to your point, Rob, yeah, I had that written. I only had one question, and that was about the other municipalities contributing. I mean, after hearing the deputy mayor's comments and the mayor's, I understand why, and I echo the words of both. I mean, I think that when you see the traffic that's on the bypass coming both to Leamington from Windsor and to Windsor from Leamington, you know there's a need, and it wouldn't surprise me that in a year or two you'll be back saying that we need to expand this to 6 or 7 days a week rather than just 5, because there is a need. Good job, Rob.
Councillor Verbeke.
For the mayor, through you, good job, Rob. I was just wondering, your maps kind of show an interesting line here. It does go through the county. I was wondering if you got a letter of support from the county.
Through Mayor Patterson, we have not, but I didn't specifically request it, but Councillor, I actually think that's a great idea. So tomorrow morning, I'll put that request in. Hopefully we'll get that prior to Wednesday.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Yes, Rob, remarkable job, fantastic work. My only question was, I asked you this afternoon about the other communities, and you said tonight that Kingsville defers their gas tax portion to us. Can you refresh my memory how much that is per year?
Through Mayor Patterson, I'm going to need my own memory refreshed on that, Councillor. In fact, it was something that I was hoping I could find prior to the meeting because I wanted to mention it, but then I thought, well, it just leads to the next question, well, how much is deferred? So I'm going to have to look into that. It's not a number that I've seen often. I think it may have to do with population in relation to ridership. So they may lump the two communities together, so we may have to kind of dig down and pull that apart in order to get that number, but I'll make note of that and circulate it to council.
Thank you. Even so, this is still a bargain at $25,000 commitment per year. This is going to be a fantastic resource for our community. Yeah, incredible work. Thank you so much.
Moved by Councillor Dunn, support by Deputy Mayor. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. Last report is one regarding granting easement to Cogeco Cable. Mr. Posliff.
Mr. Mayor, back in 2009, the municipality granted an easement to Cogeco. For the most part, they got their fiber optic line within that easement. Unfortunately, there's a small portion, about 78 meters long, that they missed. It's across the street from us, and what we need to do is grant them an easement that reflects where their infrastructure is located. Going forward, if at any time we need that property, they'll abandon the new easement and go back to the existing. None of this will be at any cost to the municipality.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you'll know this or not, but is there any chance that this will help in the process of us getting fiber into Leamington?
I suspect it's not related. I don't think they'll give us that for this.
I had the same question, so yeah, we'll get there. No. It's just it's another topic for another day. This is just a legal thing that we have to do tonight on this matter, but yeah, further discussions need to be had on fiber. Moved by Councillor Verbicki, support by Councillor Hammond. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. Matters for approval? None. Other matters for consideration? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to have the following motion that was passed at the January 29th, 2018 meeting to be reconsidered, and that motion was that there be a 2% economic adjustment to non-union staff, council, members of the Committee of Adjustment, Leamington Police Services Board, the Union Water Joint Board of Management Remuneration, and that such adjustment be effective January 1st, 2018. So I need I would make the motion.
Okay, you have a seconder on that?
I'm hoping.
Councillor Hammond?
And further, I would also like that considered this evening so we could discuss and move forward on it.
Okay. Ms. Percy?
The procedural bylaw allows council to suspend the rules and deal with the matter this evening instead of bringing it back on the next agenda, but it requires a unanimous vote of those members present now.
Okay. So we can do that. Are there questions from council as to what this means, or Deputy Mayor? You know,
Can I say what I want
Sure.
to change? Apparently, it wasn't put into the resolution that the part-time and the student employees that received an increase December 11th of 2017 to accommodate the minimum wage, we should have kept them separate.
Not included in the 2%.
Not included them
Yep.
in the 2%, and that
Yep.
was not added to the resolution. I would like to see that added because they already had an increase,
Okay.
and that's the only part that I'd like reconsidered.
Council clear on that? Yep. So I have to have a motion within a motion, so I do need a motion for council to allow this to be considered this evening. Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Dunn. Discussion on that? Yeah, it's just, I'm getting to the end of the night. Discussion on that motion? All in favor? Carried. And then we have the other motion on the floor, which is the correction to the 2%. Discussion on that motion? All in favor? And carried. Done. So, report on closed session. Ms. Percy. Oh, sorry.
So there was not a closed meeting held this evening, but this is a report from the February 12th closed meeting. So closed meeting was held 6:30 p.m. after the open session of council on February 12th, 2018, pursuant to subsection 239(2)C and 2E of the Municipal Act for the purpose of considering 4 items. The first item was a confidential report, LLS 0418, dated January 11th, regarding outstanding claims against the municipality. No direction was given on that report. The second item, confidential report LLS 1218 dated February 12th regarding potential legal action arising from the declaration of a state of emergency on October 13th, 2016. Council provided direction to administration on this matter. The third item, confidential report LLS 13-18 dated February 7th regarding potential acquisition of waterfront lands. Council provided direction to administration on that matter. And the final item, confidential report LLS 1118 dated February 12th regarding litigation of the waterfront lands. Council provided direction to administration on this matter. Proper notice of the meeting was given and the meeting adjourned at 7:53 p.m.
Council's wishes? Move? Nothing required? Oh, okay, all right. Just a report of then. All right, so then we'll move on to consideration of bylaws.
Bylaw 11-18 being a bylaw to provide for the construction of the Dreger Drain in lots 224, 225, concession NTR in lots 19-20, concession 6, Municipality of Leamington, County of Essex. This is first and second reading only. The next bylaw 12-8-18 is with respect to the signs, and that will not be considered tonight by council. Bylaw 13-18 being a bylaw to impose fees and charges by the corporation and municipality of Leamington, and this will be as amended. This bylaw is a housekeeping bylaw. There's been several amendments to the user fee bylaw since passing. There's been 5 actually. We get to that point, we want to repeal it and just replace it with a new one. Nothing in that bylaw has changed since the passing of those other amending ones. And the reason I say it's amended is because it did include the fee for the sign, so that would be taking that out. And then bylaw 14-18 being a bylaw to confirm proceedings of council at its meeting held February 26, 2018.
Now council's wishes. Moved by Councillor Verbicki, support by Councillor Wilkinson. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. Notices of motion, there were none circulated, so we're into open session. Councillor Verbicki.
Well, since our staff seems to have so much time, sarcastically, I was just wondering, it's been 7 years, and I'm going to hit it again. I'm not going to talk about problems with getting the best tender or something for vehicles, but to our CAO, official plan, am I going to be around to have any input on it? Do you have a date yet? I know you got a lot of coals in the fire. I'd like to see something verbally, and then I'm putting that down on my calendar.
I am aware that we are working on the official plan. I'll defer to Paul Barnable. He probably has a more specific date.
Yeah, Danielle is working with the consultant on that. I'm going to say this year, probably, hopefully in the fall. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, you will. You don't get replaced until December 1st. Right? Anyway. Yeah, and yes, you could apply as a delegation too, so there you go. But I think we've been waiting for the county to finish their OP, have we not? Isn't that what delayed us the most?
No, in part, there are a lot of moving parts on this thing. I think, we've been working on the secondary plan as well, the official plan, the CIP. There is, I'm not going to say that it was the county that held us up. There are components, but for the most part, it's just an enormous job. At the same time as we've seen, well, as you know, the development in Leamington was over $160 million last year. All of that takes a great deal of time, but as Paul indicated, we hope to have that tied up to this year yet.
Yeah, I didn't mean to indicate the county was holding us up. It was just part of, we didn't want to do our OP and then have to go back and change it because the county hadn't finished theirs. But I could be confusing years past with that one for all I know. Yeah. Mr. Barnwell?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll talk to Danielle tomorrow and see if I can get a timeline out to council on that and what to expect when we have that done.
Okay. Anything else under open session? Councillor Dunn?
Through your worship, I just want to thank all the volunteers at the Giving Spoon Soup Lunch that we held at the bridge. It was a huge success. Over 720 people came out, and they were generously donated. The community came out in droves. It was just incredible, and the volunteers that we had, a number of council members as well as all kinds of other people. So my whole heart's warming with the fact that we brought a lot of new people into that bridge and also raised a lot more money for them.
Very good, and I congratulate you on doing that once again, Bill. That's awesome. Awesome effort. So really quickly for me, I just want to say that the gold medal goes to Canadian Tire in Leamington, Ontario. I don't know how many of you watched the closing ceremonies of the Olympics last night. Twice the Canadian Tire commercials were shown on there, and they started in all sorts of different areas of Canada where there's a Canadian Tire store, and at the very end, the staff was all there with signs up. I think it says, "We all play for Canada," or something like that. Leamington, Ontario, right at the bottom of it. Yep, national TV. It was awesome. So I did capture a picture of it the second time through. So I did put it on Facebook, and it's been all over the place. So really cool for Canadian Tire. I don't know how to say Bill's last name. Does anybody? Wichter, I think it is pronounced. But anyway, he's the owner manager down there, and so kudos to him and all the staff for what they did. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Statement members non-debatable. See none. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Dunn, Councillor Hammond, all in favor? And carried.